Thanks for tuning in to The Rachel Hamm Show, where you'll find the inspiration, encouragement, and tools you've been craving. Be sure to hit subscribe and give this video a quick like. Now, here's Rachel.
Hi, this is The Rachel Hamm Show. I'm Rachel Hamm. Nice to see you. It's been a little while. I've taken some time to have time with my family over the last few weeks. My husband's an educator, so he gets time off in the summer. And it has been great to be together and get refreshed and just enjoy each other's company. I am so thankful to have married someone that I adore. I seem to just adore him more and more each year. Truly, it sounds so like cliched and sappy or whatever, but it's true. We are thoroughly enjoying each other's company, especially because of having adult children now, where we have more time together. We don't have to get a babysitter. We can do whatever we want. We just are free, and it's been great. Such a fun thing. I really encourage you to invest in your marriage all along throughout the years. Invest in your marriage. It's worth it. So that's been sweet. Although I have to say it's been hellishly hot here. I mean, literally like from the pit of hell, 115 degrees for like 3 weeks in a row or something like that. It's been horribly hot. And can you say weather manipulation? Anyway, abnormally hot, breaking records and stuff like that. So we've been just doing our best to stay cool, hunkering down inside. Even the pools around in this area feel like a bath water, because it's so the heat is warming up the water so much. So it's been a little rough in that way, but it's been nice relationally with my husband. Hope you've been enjoying the interesting summer and interesting political things that are happening. I've been hearing from some of my political sources what's actually happening instead of what appears to be happening. So maybe I will put together a show for you about that, because it's interesting. But today I'm going to be sharing a dream that I had. And it's a interesting dream. It was an interesting dream. I actually had this dream on April 11th, and I am just now sharing it because I didn't know what it meant. I have been trying to interpret it and have felt confused by it. I could tell it was a God dream. That was clear from the beginning, but I couldn't tell what it meant. So I kept trying to interpret it and kept trying, and it just kept not feeling right. And then all of a sudden it was like I knew what it meant. And so I have gone through and I did a little different this time. Normally I would read a dream to you and then tell you the interpretation, but today I'm adding in interpretation throughout. So like I read a paragraph of the dream and then I have some interpretation added right below that, like for that paragraph. So it'll be a little different, but I'm going to put it up on the screen too, so you can read along if you want to. And I hope that you find it as interesting as I did. All right, let's get into the dream. So I have titled this dream, "The Psych Ward is Attached to My House." Okay, interesting. All right, so let's get started reading. And again, I'm going to put it on the screen now so you can read along if you want to. I dreamed that we had bought this big house and were moving into it. As we're moving in, I began noticing that there are so many things I did not like about the house. The curtain rod was really ugly. It was ceramic and brass and just very old-fashioned. It looked like it was from the 70s. Possible interpretation of that, what began to take root in the church in the 70s is what we're talking about here, okay? Then the wife whom we had bought the house from, I noticed had put up some sort of hat rack above the closet and next to the closet of the room that we were standing in. It was really ugly, and it had ugly bridal veils hanging on it. There were a bunch of different kinds of veils, which I saw as potentially a metaphor for different churches or different denominations. Meaning, like, speaking of like the bride of Christ, right? So like the bride of Christ, and these are veils for brides. And there were different kinds of veils. So I took that as maybe different kinds of churches, different kinds of denominations, just explaining my thought process there. Okay, it looked like she was in the wedding business, the previous owner. The wedding business being a metaphor for turning church into a business. I noticed that the veils, I noticed the veils had tags on them still. So it looked like she had bought them somewhere else and then was reselling them. I looked away from the veils and then looked back, and Marshall, my husband, had taken them down. Marshall taking the veils down being a metaphor for God putting an end to what had been happening here, and also maybe an end to what has been hidden or veiled until now. I told him that we should look into this and see if these veils had any value. I went over to where Marshall had put the veils, and now suddenly all the veils were gone, and it was just the part that goes on your head. Again, the veils being removed is a metaphor for God exposing the truth. I noted, and again, also Marshall, my husband, him being a metaphor for God. I noticed that one of the price tags on them said TJ Maxx. I saw that the wife had purchased it very cheaply. There were like 3 or 4 discount tags on the TJ Maxx price tag. Like she had gotten it as cheaply as possible. Like it had been discounted over and over. And the things that you get at TJ Maxx are already so cheap, but on top of their cheap prices, the veils had been discounted multiple times. A metaphor being the extremely cheap discounted veils are a metaphor for watering down and cheapening the gospel, it getting progressively cheaper with time. As I began to look at the bridal headpieces, they were all so cheap, and I realized they were of almost no value. They were complete garbage. The cheapened, watered down gospel has no value. The churches who have pushed the cheapened, watered down gospel will become irrelevant. I noticed there was one royal blue, sparkly sequenced Jewish yarmulke in with the bridal stuff. I picked it up and held it, again looking to see if it was usable. It seemed like it might be, but then it also kind of seemed flimsy. It also didn't seem like something that a man would wear. It was girly. What man would wear a sparkly yarmulke? I wondered. The blue sparkly yarmulke being a metaphor for how the American church has feminized the gospel. Kind of like the book No More Mr. Nice Guy talks about. It's a book about how the church has become feminized and emasculating. There's also a problem with men abdicating their roles as strong, courageous leaders. Then it's like it's suddenly later, or maybe even the next day. Marshall was back at work and I was at the house. Marshall being back at work and me being at the house is a metaphor for God's Spirit leading these churches that have cheapened and watered down the gospel. I'm walking through the house and having deep regret over purchasing it. I wondered why we purchased this. Having deep regret over purchasing this home is a metaphor for the Holy Spirit being grieved. I contemplated how the house was so big and how we didn't need a big house anymore as most of the kids were gone. It's going to be a lot of house to take care of, I thought. The house being so big and the reference to the children being gone is a metaphor for how a younger generation has left the church. Many church buildings are being underutilized because their congregations have shrunk, aka the house is too big. It's a metaphor for how mega churches are too big. We don't need massive churches where people can easily hide. We need smaller churches where every member matters and is an integral part. I'm looking around in this hallway, but it's much larger than a normal hallway. It's almost like the hallway is a room. Hallways are metaphors for times of transition. This hallway being much larger than normal implies this transition will be long. In the hallway, there were a bunch of bookshelves full of books that the previous owner had left. Again, the bookshelf was very out of date. And I was looking to see if I could paint it, and then I noticed it was in disrepair and was total garbage too. I wondered if any of those books on the bookshelf were worthwhile, but then suddenly it felt like taking care of the previous owner's stuff was going to be so much work. The bookshelf full of old books that were worthless was a metaphor for information that has been put out by these churches who have weakened and watered down the gospel as being totally worthless. Literally, there are probably many books that should just be thrown away because their information is literally invalid. Also, me feeling exasperated by how much work it was going to be to deal with the previous owner's stuff is a metaphor for these weak churches making messes by misrepresenting the gospel so badly that true believers are going to have a lot of work to do to help redeem the reputation of Christ in the eyes of many. Many people have been led astray and hurt by the weakened gospel. It is going to be a lot of work to undo that and to help people see the truth. I then looked at the wall, which was striped wallpaper with 2 shades of yellow. I then noticed that the walls were actually soft. The yellow stripes were material and the wall was cushiony, like it had padding in it. It was very strange, and I took note of the fact that that is what they do in insane asylums. They put crazy people in padded rooms so that they can't hurt themselves. The yellow walls, the yellow on the walls was a very, very pale yellow, almost cream color. It was ugly. It looked like it was yellow that had been, again, watered down. Yellow is the color of hope, but this yellow was so pale that it felt like this weak church was not offering true hope, but yet again, a watered down fake version of it. These padded walls were a metaphor for the weak church presenting the gospel in such a way as to make it seem as safe as possible. But the true gospel is not safe. It's dangerous. The apostles were imprisoned and murdered and stoned for their faith. The weakened church tries to make the gospel seem as safe and comfortable as possible. Then, as I'm walking down the hall, I'm suddenly startled by what appears to be a doctor's office in the house. I had thought maybe it was a dermatologist's office because they were working on people's faces. I thought that would come in handy, having a dermatologist's office right in my own house, but then I got a bad feeling about it. In the, quote, dermatologist's office, unquote, there was a circle of chairs where people were laid back and they were having their faces worked on. The workers were putting these white masks on people's faces. It was a mold of sorts to make a mask for them to wear. This implying that these weak churches are creating an environment of falsehood. They are not teaching people about their true identity in Christ, but rather are creating an environment where no one is authentic. The gospel is, hold on, lost my place. The gospel is the truth, but the watered down gospel never leads people to their true identity in Christ. Instead, it creates an environment of masks and facades, aka fake religious identities, not God-given identities. Then I decided to call Ted the handyman to see if he could come and fix some things in the house. So I called him and he said he can come, and he asks what the address is. I then realize I don't know what the address is. I'm upstairs at that point, so I go look out the window to see if I can see the address on the house, but I can't. Perhaps I did not know what the address was because this dream was not about one specific place. It's a reference to many places. It's a dream about many churches, not one specific one. Instead of seeing the address, I see two black guys approaching the front door looking like they're going to break in. I think that they are probably going to try to break in because they think no one is home. So I go to what is an emergency exit that randomly suddenly appears right there and open the door that leads to a balcony and a staircase. I look down from the balcony, and now there's just one black guy, and he's different than the other two. I yell down that I am home, but that it's not a good time, and that he needs to leave. He argues with me and wants me to let him in. I am firm on telling him no. He then accuses me of being racist for not letting him in. Ezekiel's suddenly there with me when I'm doing this. I yelled at him to leave, and then I closed the door. I knew that these guys were used to getting in when the previous owner lived there because they had never stopped them from coming in before. This being a metaphor for how dark and evil spirits have had access to the people in these churches because there was a lack of protectiveness on the part of the shepherds. Okay, I just want to make sure it's really clear. This is not a racist statement. It's metaphorical. It's not, I'm not saying black people are evil, obviously. So I just want to make sure that's clear. It's just a metaphor for dark spirits. I start walking through the hallway again and turned a corner and saw that it was not just a doctor's office attached to the house. It was a surgical room and much more. It was actually a wing of a hospital. It had a very creepy vibe. I stepped into one of the hospital rooms and said something to a man that was sitting there. He turned and looked at me, and he was kind of like an ogre that didn't have a brain. He was either retarded or insane or something. He could barely speak, and he looked a little bit like the guy from the movie Goonies. And if you remember the Goonies in the 80s, the guy with the one eye that had been chained up in the dungeon, being kept as a prisoner, that's what he looked like. I quickly stepped back out of the room and kept walking. I realized that this was a psych ward, not a regular hospital. Just then, I come face to face with the head doctor who I knew to be in charge. He had clearly had a ton of plastic surgery done to his face. Kind of reminded me of the way Joel Osteen looks right now, as far as like when you look at him, it's clear he's had a lot done. Like not a little, a lot. You know, like it's completely changing the way he even looks. I had a very bad feeling about him. I'm not saying it wasn't literally Joel Osteen, just to be clear. I'm just saying it was that kind of look where it was such an overuse of plastic surgery. I had a very bad feeling about him. He said something to me, but I couldn't understand him. I could tell he was not happy. He was not happy specifically to be seeing me. He had a thick accent, and for some reason when I saw him, I thought of this passage. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep, but a hireling, he is not the shepherd. He who is not the shepherd. One who does not know his own sheep sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. The hireling flees because he is a hireling and does not care about the sheep. John 10:11-13. In the dream, I thought to myself, oh, this man is a hireling. The foreigner being in charge is a metaphor for someone who is not of God, someone who is foreign being in a leadership position. In other words, foreign to God. I asked him what the address was of the place, and he answered me, but I couldn't understand what he said. There were just two numbers, and it seemed like the street name was Moore or Roar, but he mumbled so badly I wasn't sure. I turned away from the doctor and realized that the reason I had thought it was a dermatologist's office is because they were doing stuff to people's faces, but it was like they were doing face transplants or creating masks for people's faces. And it reminded me of a guy that I had met at Colonel Phil Waldron's house who worked for the CIA. He had literally his job was to change people's identities by way of face transplants. I suddenly felt like I needed to get away from this man and away from this area of the house. How did I not know there was a psych ward or a face transplant surgery center in this house? I had so much regret. I then go back down the hallway and open Ezekiel's bedroom door. It was a mess. There were clothes all over the floor, and he was sitting there with his cousins. In the dream, they were all little kids, even though in real life, they're teenagers and young adults. Now, not their ages now. Even though their room was a mess, I was just glad that they seemed safe, so I closed the door and let them stay there. This being a metaphor for the fact that prophets have been confined and contained, like to one part of the church. They're being kept safe by the Lord, but their room was a mess because they're not allowed to use their gifts. They're oppressed by the imprisonment they're experiencing in most churches across America. In the hallway, there was an elevator, so I pushed the button on the elevator door to try to go back downstairs, but the elevator didn't work. I couldn't figure out how to get back downstairs. At one point, there had been a big sweeping spiral staircase, but now I couldn't find it. Not being able to find the way back downstairs could be a metaphor for the need to get back to the basics, aka back down to ground level. But things in these types of churches are so far gone, you can't really go backwards. There's no path back to ground one. I turned around and left the psych ward area and was walking back into the hallway area. I was contemplating how I could get out of this house. I knew we were going to lose money, and I was running the numbers around in my mind, wondering how much we could sell the house for. I wondered if I fixed it up a little or did some staging, maybe we would get more than we paid for it. I specifically thought that I could should hire a professional decorator to make one of the downstairs bathrooms really cozy and beautiful. I thought that if we could just have one nice bathroom downstairs, maybe we could sell the house. Losing money is a metaphor for losing favor with people. The shadiness and lack of godly authenticity is going to cause these mega churches and dysfunctional churches to lose favor with the people they have duped. Saying you're working for God when you're really working for Satan has led to a form of insanity, And these liars have created psych wards instead of hospitals for the people that so desperately needed healing. Also, feeling like I needed to fix up one of the bathrooms downstairs is a metaphor for a need to create a place for people to detox from these toxic situations. Maybe if we can help them detox and heal, we can move forward. I knew in the dream we had paid over $800,000 for this terrible house and would pay a $72,000 commission, and therefore we're going to lose money. But my gosh, I did not want to stay in this house. The commission causing us to lose money is a metaphor for the sins of commission that have been committed. The hirelings have led people into these forms of insanity and false identity, have committed sins that they will pay for. Okay, so there you go. That was the dream. I think that, and this is something we've talked about before, because, a lot of really godly people are not going to traditional churches right now. And I think it really is because so many churches, of course not all, so many churches have become places that are being run like a business with hirelings running them, that are creating a form of insanity because they're not teaching people about their true God-given identity. And they are not allowing not only the prophets to use their gifts, but really any of the supernatural gifts are not in operation. And, a lot of the supernatural gifts are where we get our power. So you've got this whole group of people that are churched, but powerless. How convenient that is for Satan, right? But I feel like the Lord is judging the church. Look at all the different things that have happened already with pastors. I mean, we heard about Robert Morris recently, Tony Evans. There's quite a few that have been, I think, being judged. Really, it's like the window of grace ended, and they didn't do what was right, and so judgment is coming. And judgment is coming to the house of the Lord. I would say, even in my own life, I'm feeling like conviction about sin, and in a way, I feel like I'm being nitpicked. Like the Lord's like, no, you can't do that little thing that you think is fine. It's not fine. Stop doing it. Just a lot of conviction to purify. And that's been happening for a while, just a cleansing, a purifying. But I really believe that these insane asylums, AKA dysfunctional churches being led by hirelings, are getting ready to have a reckoning with the Lord. And I pray that the people who have been harmed by those churches will be able to find the healing they need and come into a genuine relationship with God that is actually empowering and honest, and where they are authentic and they are taught their true identity in Christ. So I pray that that is coming in the future. But in the meantime, judgment is coming. All right, that's the dream. The psych ward is in the house. If you are a part of a church that is a psych ward, you know what I mean? Pray about what you're supposed to do. All right, that's it. That's all I have for you. God bless you, and know that you are loved. See you soon.
Thanks for watching The Rachel Hamm Show. If you found value in today's content, would you consider giving a gift? Any amount is appreciated, and the links to give are in the description box below this video. Or perhaps you'd like to buy one of Rachel's products so she can continue bringing content like this to you. All the links to purchase her products are in the description box below the video. To find out more about Rachel, you can go to her website, rachelhamm.com. That's Rachel, Hamm.com. See you in the next episode of The Rachel Hamm Show.